Second question?
There are several examples, Mr. Trump. We went through the Afghanistan being a mistake. Right. Within one day, you reversed yourself on Syrian refugees.
Let me explain that. You're right. Let me explain. First time the question had been put to me, it was very early on. The migration had just started, and I had heard that the number was a very, very small number. By the second day, 2 or 3 days later, I heard the number was going to be thousands and thousands of people. You know, when they originally heard about it, they were talking about bringing very, very small numbers in. And I said, begrudgingly, well, I guess maybe that's okay. It was not like, let's bring them in, because I think we should build a safe zone. We should really, what we should be doing is building safe zones so they can stay in their own country and not go all over. And at least this way, we're not going to have the problem. That's what we have to do. But just to say, because I fully understand what you're asking, when I first heard the question, first time the question was ever asked to me, first time I really had known about the question, the migration had just started, I was very much like, okay. By the time I went back and studied it, and they were talking about bringing thousands and thousands, I changed my tune, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But the point I'm going for is you change your tune on so many things, and that has some people saying, what is his core?
Megyn, I have a very strong core. I have a very strong core. But I've never seen a successful person who wasn't flexible, who didn't have a certain degree of flexibility. You have to have a certain degree of flexibility. You can't, for instance, let's say on the second question, you can't say it's okay, and then you find out it's not okay, and you don't want to do anything. You have to be flexible because you learn. I mean, before I knew, the question was asked by Bill, and the next day or the couple of days later, the question was asked by I was asked by a number of people, actually. I was asked by Sean, but I was asked by a number of people. But by that time, the number had increased significantly.
Sean was the next day after Bill.
The next day. But I had learned. I mean, nobody had ever asked me the question. This was brand new. And I really mean it. You have to show a degree of flexibility. If you're going to be one way and you think it's wrong, does that mean the rest of your life you have to go in the wrong direction because you don't want to change?
Megyn, but I think this is Megyn.
Go ahead, Governor.
Look, I did 200 meetings in New Hampshire. I don't know how many in Michigan now. And in these town halls, people come in, and they're very emotional meetings. And you know what they really want to know? If somebody tells them something, can they believe it? And the reason why people are so upset in this country is because politicians all the time tell them what they want to hear, and they go to Washington or they go to the state capitol, wherever, and they don't deliver on those promises. You know, when I ran for governor of Ohio, I said not only would we balance the budget, but we would cut taxes. People said it can't be done. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't believe it. We cut taxes in Ohio more than any governor in the country, and $5 billion worth of tax cuts. We're now running a surplus in Ohio. But you see, what's getting in the hearts and souls of people is they want change, and they keep putting outsiders in to bring about the change. Then the change doesn't come. Then they put more outsiders in because we're putting people in that don't understand compromise, they don't understand policy, and people are getting more and more frustrated with the system, which is why we must pick somebody that has a record of achievement, not just talk, not just talk, but a record of achievement. That's how we'll restore credibility.
This is not just about flexibility.
Go ahead,
There's a difference between flexibility and telling people whatever you think you need to say to get them to do what you want them to do.
Right.
And that's what Donald has done throughout his career. Well, he did. That's why Trump University is so relevant here. I saw this video last week where he's sitting in front of a camera saying, we're going to hire the best people, and I'm going to handpick them, and they're going to be handpicked instructors, the best instructors in the world. One of them, by the way, was a manager at a Buffalo Wild Wing, and that's who they hired to do this. And people borrowed money, and they signed up for this fake university. And these people owe all of this money now, and they got nothing in return for it, but you were willing to say whatever you had to say to get them to give you their money.
Go ahead,
and we're not going to do that to our country.
We'll find out when we have the trial. By the way, just so you understand, this is a case I could have settled very easily, but I don't settle cases very easily when I'm right. 98% approval rating. We have an A from the Better Business Bureau. We have a 98% approval rating of people that took the course. We have an A from the Better Business Bureau, and people like it. Now, he's saying they didn't learn. We have many, many people that will be witnesses. Again, I don't settle cases. I don't do it because that's why I don't get sued very often, because I don't settle, unlike a lot of other people. We have a situation where we will win in court, but many of the people that are witnesses did tremendously well and made a lot of money by taking the course.
Go ahead, Senator.
But you're going to see. You're going to see. You don't know.
Go ahead. It's Senator Rubio.
No, I've read the affidavit. No. Before they had the information.
Go on my website, MarcoRubio.com.
Before they had the information.
Wait. Senator Rubio, stand by. Let him finish his point quickly, and then I'll give you the floor.
It is right now an A. Once they had the information, it got switched. The only reason it was a D was because we didn't care. We didn't give them the information. When they got the information, it became an A.
With respect, we went back and looked at this.
Yes.
The rating from the Better Business Bureau was a D-. That's the last publicly available rating in 2010, and it was a result of the number of complaints they had received.
But it was elevated to an A.
That's never been publicly
released. To an A. I could give it to you. I will give it to you.
Let's just bring the viewers up to speed. Let's just bring the viewers up to speed.
It was elevated to an A.
Let me just set the record, and then you guys can have at it. There was Trump University, which was a business that you started, and it was marketed to many people, and now there is a class action of over 5,000 plaintiffs against you, Mr. Trump.
Right.
And it involves veterans, and it involves teachers, and it involves so-called little guys, working class and lower working class and middle class, who say that they were fleeced, who say it was a scam. The class has been certified, and in that case, you countersued the lead plaintiff, alleging that you were being defamed. That case was thrown out against her.
The lead plaintiff is now getting out of the case because it's so bad for her.
But what happened was...
Excuse me. The lead plaintiff signed a letter saying how great it was and is on tape saying how great it was.
Okay, but stand by. But what happened in that case was you countersued her. The court threw out your countersuit and made you pay almost $800,000 in legal fees of hers. And you made this same argument about 98% of the people being happy with Trump University. And that woman in particular signing a survey saying she liked it while someone was standing over her shoulder.
And this is what
This is what the Court of Appeals found. They said that the plaintiffs against you are like the Madoff victims. This is what the Court of Appeals said. They found that victims of con artists often sing the praises of their victimizers until they realize they have been fleeced.
You know what? Let's see what happens in court. This is a civil case. Very easy to have settled. Could settle it now. Very easy to have settled. This is a civil. Let's see what happens at the end of a couple of years when this case is over. Okay?
It's been going for 5 years.
Yeah, it's been going for a long time.
Go ahead, Senator.
I spoke to one of the victims yesterday. I spoke to one of the victims yesterday.
One of the
This gentleman, no, there's several. Obviously, there's so many, I can't talk to them every day. I spoke to one of them yesterday. They told me exactly what happened. They signed up for this course because they believed Mr. Trump was this fantastic businessman, that Donald's going to teach them all the tricks of the trade. They signed up. They paid $15,000 for this course. They were asked for additional money for this course. If they really wanted the real secrets of success, they had to pay even more money, and so they did. And you know what they got in these courses? Stuff you can pull off of Zillow. When they finally realized what a scam it was, they asked for their money back, and you refused to give them their money back.
I gave many people their money back.
Then why don't you tonight say you're going to give the money back?
Let me just see.
Okay, Senator Rubio, let him answer.
Why doesn't he make that pledge right now?
Let him answer. Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
We will see who's right at the end of a few years. But almost all of the people, many, many people signed what's called a report card at the end. Did you like the course? How did you like it? Almost all of them said it was terrific, okay? With letters, with this. Some of them are on tape saying it was terrific. Let's see what happens at the end of 3 years.
With respect, Mr. Trump, 1/3 of the plaintiffs in that case demanded refunds. So it's not the case that 98% were pleased with what they got.
I gave some refunds to people, because if they asked for the refund at a certain period of time, and we gave refunds to people.
Okay.
But let's see what happens at the end of 3 years.
Understood.
Megan,
let's see who's right.
It's still a pending litigation.
Here's why this is relevant.
It's called pending litigation.
Megan, this is why this is relevant to this.
All right, Senator Rubio, then Senator Cruz.
Go ahead. Because he's trying to do to the American voter what he did to the people that signed up for this course. He's making promises. He has no intention of keeping it. And it won't just be $36,000 that they lose. It's our country that's at stake here. The future of the United States in the most important election in a generation, and he is trying to con people into giving them their vote, just like he conned these people into giving them their money.
Let me tell you, the real con artist, excuse me, the real con artist is Senator Marco Rubio, who was elected in Florida. and who has the worst voting record in the United States Senate. He doesn't go to vote. He's absent. He doesn't go. Now, the people of Florida can't stand him. He couldn't get elected dog catcher. The people of Florida, and by the way, I know he's going to spend $25 million on ads. Without that, he wouldn't have a chance. He's 20 points down. The people in Florida wouldn't elect him dog catcher. He couldn't get any. He is right now 21 points down to me. And, you know, again, there'll be a lot of advertising. It's the only thing that might save him, but I doubt it.
I'm coming to you next, but go ahead.
He scammed the people of Florida. He scammed. He doesn't vote. He doesn't show up in the U.S. Senate. He doesn't vote. He scammed the people.
Understood.
He defrauded the people of Florida.
With respect, you've made that point. Go ahead.
There's no, as you can see in his answer, it's always the same thing.
You defrauded the people.
Challenged on a point. He's defrauded people out of things, and not just, by the way, on the issue of Trump University. He had another development in Mexico that he had nothing to do with except his name on the building. People put money into that building.
Licensing.
They lost their money. Yeah, and the licensing, but you told them you own the building. So they gave him his money. They lost their money time and again.
Stand by.
He has cheated people out of
I will come back to you. Senator Cruz wants to weigh in. You're coming back. Go ahead.
Megan, let me just ask the voters at home, is this the debate you want playing out in the general election? I mean, the stakes in this election are too high. For 7 years, millions of Americans, we've been struggling. Wages have been stagnating. People are hurting. Our constitutional rights are under assault. And if we nominate Donald, we're going to spend the spring, the fall, and the summer with the Republican nominee facing a fraud trial, with Hillary Clinton saying, why did you give my campaign and my foundation $100,000?
It's a minor civil case.
And with Hillary Clinton pointing out that he supported her 4 times in her presidential race.
It's a minor civil case.
Donald, learn not to interrupt.
There are many civil cases.
Count to 10, Donald. Count to 10. Count to 10. The stakes are too high, and if you are one of the 65 to 70% of Republicans who recognize that nominating Donald would be a disaster, then I ask you to come join us. If you're supporting other candidates, come join us. We welcome you to our team because we've demonstrated not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 5 separate times we have beat Donald. And if you don't want him to be the nominee, then I ask you to stand with us as a broad coalition of people who believe in the Constitution, believe in freedom, and want to turn this country around.
Go ahead, Mr. Trump. The floor is yours.
I don't believe these politicians. All talk, no action. I'm standing here listening to I'm hearing him say about a percentage. CNN, he gets 15. That means 85%, based on what you're saying, of the people don't dig you, number one. Number one. Is that a correct statement? How do you get 50? Are you at 15 in the new CNN poll? Do you believe in CNN? I mean, I know we're with Fox. But CNN spent,
I'll respond to you.
CNN spent a lot of money on a poll, just came out. I'm at 49. He's at 15. He tells me about 65% of the people. It's not 65% of the people. If you go by that, 85% of the people. Then he goes, we have 5. And, well, excuse me, I won 10 states. If you listen to him, it's like, I won 10 states. Everybody knows that on Super Tuesday, Trump was the winner. There wasn't one person that didn't say that. Even the 2 people on your left and right said we did a great job. So how does he take 5 and say it's better than 10?
Go ahead, sir.
I am by far the leader, but if you listen to a politician, he'll try and convince you otherwise.
Senator Cruz, go.
All right, well, Donald lives by the polls every day. He tweets by the polls. He's told us to look to the CNN poll. Well, that's a very good poll to look to because that CNN poll showed that head-to-head Donald Trump loses to Hillary Clinton by 8 points. He doesn't just lose close, he loses by 8 points. That same poll he told you to look at shows me beating Hillary Clinton. We cannot mess this up. And by the way, the last 4 polls in a row, when you nominate a candidate who literally has been on every side of every issue, and in the course of this debate, maybe on 2 other sides before we're done, that's not how you win, and the stakes are too high.
All right, I'm going to let Mr. Trump. I'm going to let you respond to that, Mr. Trump. I'm going to go to you, Governor. You're up next.
Me beating Hillary Clinton, and very, very easily.
Okay. Do you want to weigh in?
Look, honestly, when I see people at these meetings, these town halls, where we take massive questions, and I get to spend time with them. Last night, there was a woman that came to tell me about the loss of her 15-year-old son who took his own life. See, there's people in this country, and Ted's right, their wages haven't gone up for so long. They see the rich getting richer, they believe, and they're not moving, and they put their money in the bank, and they got no interest on their money. They receive none. And their sons or daughters are living in the basement because they can't get a good job after they rang up so much college debt. What people are hungry for is, who can fix this? People want to know, what can you do to solve the problems in Washington, to make sure that we have stronger job growth and better wages? But you know what else they're yearning for? They want to believe that they have the power to fix things where they live, and they want the power back so they can begin to do things in their community. Now listen, this has been going on for a long time here, and I appreciate the discussion back and forth. But there are a lot of people out there yearning for somebody who's going to bring America back, both at the leadership level and in the neighborhood, where we can begin to reignite the spirit of the United States of America. And let's stop fighting.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you.
Much more to come live from the Fox Theater, including where the candidates stand on the social issues facing the country. The Republican presidential debate continues in a moment.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fox News Republican presidential debate. We want to get right back to the questions.
We are here in Detroit. The top issues in Michigan, according to Facebook, are displayed in a word cloud you're taking a look at. The second biggest issue is clean water. That, of course, is directly tied to the situation in Flint. Senator Rubio, Bernie Sanders, and Hillary Clinton have both been to Flint. They are both running ads in this state, focusing on that, focusing on supporting Flint and fixing the problems, showing images of people in Flint, thankful that they're there. Without getting into the political blame game here, where are the national Republicans' plans on infrastructure and solving problems like this? If you talk to people in this state, they are really concerned about Flint on both sides of the aisle. So why haven't GOP candidates done more or talked more about this?
Well, I know I've talked about it, and others in our campaign have talked about it, and other candidates have talked about it as well. What happened in Flint was a terrible thing. It was a systemic breakdown at every level of government, at both the federal and partially at both the state and partially at the federal level as well. And by the way, the politicizing of it, I think, is unfair, because I don't think that someone woke up one morning and said, let's figure out how to poison the water system to hurt someone. But accountability is important. I will say I give the governor credit. He took responsibility for what happened. And he's talked about people being held accountable and the need to change this, Governor Snyder. But here's the point. This should not be a partisan issue. The way the Democrats have tried to turn this into a partisan issue, that somehow Republicans woke up in the morning and decided, oh, it's a good idea to poison some kids with lead. It's absurd. It's outrageous. It isn't true. All of us are outraged by what happened, and we should work together to solve it. And there is a proper role for the government to play at the federal level in helping local communities to respond to a catastrophe of this kind, not just to deal with the people that have been impacted by it, but to ensure that something like this never happens again.
Thank you, Senator.
Governor Kasich, the city of Detroit has long suffered with urban blight, broken streetlights, dilapidated and vacant houses, and so on. In 2013, Detroit actually declared bankruptcy, which helped, but the schools here remain a big problem. They're $3.5 billion in debt and are some of the most troubled and poorly testing in the country. The kids too often go to classrooms that are unsafe, falling apart, infested with rodents and insects. Experts say the schools could go bankrupt by next month. Question to you, if the federal government bailed out the auto industry here in Detroit, should it also bail out the Detroit schools?
Well, look, first of all, I think the mayor now is controlling the schools. This is not much different than what happened in Cleveland, Ohio, where the African-American Democrat mayor, the union, and business leaders came to see me and said, would you help us to pass legislation to really create a CEO environment so that we can take control of the schools. We even invested in a buyout plan where we bought out the teachers who had been there a long time because there were so many young teachers who had been laid off who were so enthusiastic to get back in the schools. It worked beautifully. Cleveland's coming back. The Cleveland schools are coming back because of a major overhaul. It's the same thing that has to happen in all of our urban schools. And frankly, look, if I were president, I'd take 104 federal programs, bundle them into 4 buckets and send it to the states, because fixing schools rests at the state and the local level, and particularly at the school board level. Now, I also believe that you need to introduce vocational education in those schools. You need mentoring in those schools. And you need to have a situation where people can have an alternative form to get a degree. And you need school choice, both vouchers and charter schools. All of those things can come together to help Megan. But here's the bottom line, and I'll go quickly. We as adults have to fight in our neighborhoods, in our communities, for our children's education. Put the politics aside, and everyone in this room can play a role in lifting their schools and lifting the students who are in those schools, because too much politics gets in the middle of it, and where we focus as adults and put children first, we see tremendous results. And the people of this town are going to rise, and they need to be involved. Thank you.
For half a century, as you all know, Detroit was the symbol of America's industrial might. 300,000 manufacturing jobs in this city. At last count, there are now fewer than 30,000 manufacturing jobs here, and the unemployment rate in this city is 11%, twice the national average. Senator Cruz, I know that you have general plans for tax reform, but what specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to America and train residents of cities like Detroit to do those jobs?
Well, Chris, thank you for that question. Let me start by observing that Detroit is a great city with a magnificent legacy that has been utterly decimated by 60 years of failed left-wing policies. You know, Henry Ford revolutionized automobile manufacturing and brought automobiles to the middle class. During World War II, Detroit funded the arsenals of democracy to help us win World War II. In the 1960s, Detroit was the Silicon Valley of America. It had a population of 2 million people, had the highest per capita income in the country. And then for 50 years, left-wing Democrats have pursued destructive tax policies, weak crime policies, and have driven the citizens out. This city now has just 700,000 citizens. There are vacant homes, one after the other after the other. Crime has been rampant, and it is an outrage. And let me say to folks in the media, that is a story that the media ought to be telling over and over again, the destruction of left-wing policies and the millions who have hurt because of it.
Sure. Now, well, I was going to say, I'll give you 30 seconds to try to answer my question. What specifically would you do to bring manufacturing jobs back to Detroit and to train the residents here to do those jobs?
The way you bring manufacturing back to America is, number one, you lift the regulations. As president, I will repeal Obamacare, the biggest job killer in America. I will pull back the federal regulators, the EPA, and all the regulators that are killing small businesses and manufacturing. And my tax plan, which is a very, very detailed plan on the website, tedcruz.org, is what's called border adjustable. We get rid of all the taxes. We get rid of the corporate income tax and the death tax and the Obamacare taxes and the payroll tax. And we replace it with a 16% business flat tax that is border adjustable, which means all exports are entirely tax-free and all imports pay the 16% business flat tax. That's a 32% differential. What that will do, Chris, is bring millions of manufacturing jobs back to this country, bring the steel industry back to this country, create an environment where when we compete on a fair and level playing field, American ingenuity can beat anyone. But right now, the federal government isn't giving us a level playing field.
Thank you, Senator.
Gentlemen, the next series of questions will be on social issues. Governor Kasich, the last debate, you were asked a question about religious liberty and a hypothetical situation where a same-sex couple approaches a cupcake maker to do their wedding. Here's what you said.
If you're in the business of selling things, if you're not going to sell to somebody you don't agree with, okay, today I'm not going to sell to somebody who's gay, and tomorrow maybe I won't sell to somebody who's divorced.
Governor, some faith leaders got nervous about that answer. Do gay marriage dissenters have rights?
Well, look, first of all, I try to be a man of faith every day as best as I can. And I try to focus in my faith on the do's, and I think the don'ts will take care of themselves once I get the do's right, which is humility and loving my enemy and caring for my neighbor. But secondly, look, you're in the commerce business. You want to sell somebody a cupcake, great, okay? But now if they ask you to participate in something you really don't like, that's a whole nother issue, okay? Another issue. Here's what I like to see happen. The Supreme Court ruled. I don't agree with the ruling. I'm in favor of marriage between, traditional marriage, a man and a woman. What I hope was going to happen after the Supreme Court ruling is things would settle down. If you go to a photographer to take pictures at your wedding and he says, I'd rather not do it, find another photographer. Don't sue them in court. You know what? The problem is, in our country, we need to learn to respect each other and be a little bit more tolerant for one another. And at the end of the day, don't go to court. Can't we have common sense in America? That's the way it used to be. And there was a book written called The Death of Common Sense. We need to bring it back. But at the end of the day, if somebody is being pressured to participate in something that is against their deeply held religious beliefs, then we're going to have to think about dealing with a law. But you know what? I'd rather people figure this out without having to put another law in the books and have more arguments in this country. Why don't we come together as a country, respect one another, love one another, and lift this country? I think that's what people want. So,
Senator
thanks
Cruz.
for asking.
Senator Cruz, the U.S. Supreme Court obviously declared same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states, a decision you have criticized. Given the current status of the law, do you believe a gay couple should be able to adopt?
Well, listen, adoption is decided at the state level, and I am a believer in the 10th Amendment in the Constitution. I would leave the question of marriage to the states. I would leave the question of adoption to the states. That's the way it's been for 2 centuries of our nation's history, until 5 unelected judges in an illegitimate and wrong decision decided to seize the authority over marriage and wrongfully tear down the marriage laws of all 50 states. Now, integrally connected to this is the question of religious liberty. And at the last debate, one of my colleagues on this stage said on the question of religious liberty and Supreme Court nominees that he'd be willing to compromise and negotiate. I can tell you, for me, there are areas that we should compromise on. Marginal tax rates, we can reach a middle ground on. But when it comes to core principles and convictions, when it comes to the Constitution and Bill of Rights, I can tell the men and women at home, I will never compromise away your religious liberty. And for me, Brett, religious liberty has been a lifelong passion. I've spent 2 decades defending religious liberty, including defending the 10 Commandments before the U.S. Supreme Court and winning, defending the Pledge of Allegiance before the Supreme Court and winning, and defending the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial, a lone white Latin cross that was erected to honor the men and women who gave their lives in World War I. I represented 3 million veterans for free,
Senator,
defending that memorial, and we won 5-4 before the Supreme
Senator, thank you. Senator Cruz definitely avoided saying your name, Mr. Trump, but I think he was referring to you and your religious liberty answer. Would you like to respond?
I have nothing to say. I mean, I generally speaking agree with what he said. I would have certainly have rather left it to the states. I was always in favor. I was very surprised when they came up with that decision. I would have preferred had it been left to the states, and I think most people would have preferred that.
Senator Rubio, the late Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, a conservative icon, obviously pointed out in United States versus Heller that, like most rights, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. Just like the First Amendment doesn't allow you to go into a theater and yell fire, he said the Second Amendment leaves room to regulate guns. So do you agree with Justice Scalia? And if so, what limits would you draw around the Second Amendment?
As few as possible. The Second Amendment, as I've said before, is not a suggestion. It is the constitutional right of every American to protect themselves and their families. It is a right that it is the Second Amendment for a reason. It is right after the defense of the freedom of speech for a reason. For clearly the founders of our nation understood, and the framers of the Constitution understood, that you cannot have life and you cannot have liberty and you cannot pursue happiness if you are not safe. And the Second Amendment, when people talk about gun laws, what they need to realize is criminals don't follow gun laws. They're criminals. By definition, they ignore the law. But the gun rights of Americans, if you are talking to a law-abiding citizen and a gun owner like myself, if you pass a law, I will follow whatever the law is. Black market, where they then go out and commit crimes and they steal guns from each other. Gun laws are not effective. They simply do not provide for safety, but they do, however, ensure that law-abiding people don't have access to weapons to protect themselves and guns to protect themselves, but criminals will always be well armed. They don't care about the law. They don't follow the law. We will protect the Second Amendment when I'm President of the United States.
Mr. Trump, you were once a supporter of an assault weapons ban. So do you think there should be any restrictions on the Second Amendment?
I'm a big defender of the Second Amendment. And if you look at what's happened, whether it's in California where you had the 14 people killed, whether it's in Paris, which, by the way, has the toughest gun laws in the world, and 130 people killed, many, many people in the hospital, gravely injured. They will be dying. Many people would be dying in addition. If we had guns, or if they had guns on the other side of the with the bullets going in the opposite direction, you would not have had 130 people killed. That I can tell you right now. So I'm a very, very big supporter of the Second Amendment.
But in 2000, you wrote in your book, I generally oppose gun control, but I support the ban on assault weapons.
I don't support it anymore. I do not support the ban on assault.
Senator Cruz, any limits to the Second Amendment?
Well listen. Unlike Donald, I would not support banning firearms. In that instance, Bill Clinton banned many of the most popular firearms in America. And by the way, the study showed that ban did nothing to reduce violent crime. It just took away the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. And let me point out, you know, it is easy for political candidates to have rhetoric and say, I support the Second Amendment. But you cannot say that and at the same time say what Donald just said, which is that on the question of Supreme Court nominees, he wants to compromise and reach a middle ground with Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer. That's what he said in the last debate. And any justice that Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer sign off on.
I did not say.
And I would point out Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer are both Democrats that Mr. Trump has written checks to repeatedly. Any justice that those two sign off on is going to be a left-wing judicial activist who will undermine religious liberty, and we are one vote away from the Hillary decision being overturned, which would effectively erase the Second Amendment from the Bill of Rights. If you care about the Second Amendment, then you need to ask, who on this stage do you know will appoint principled constitutionalists to the court and not cut a deal with your Second Amendment rights?
Mr. Trump.
So we're listening to the all-talk, no-action politician, and he was the primary supporter of John Roberts, who gave us Obamacare. No, it's not. You take a look. He was the primary supporter. He pushed John Roberts and pushed him, and Bush ultimately appointed him. He got appointed, and when it came his time to raise his hand and kill Obamacare, not once but twice, he let us down, and he did the wrong thing. This is the man that was the primary supporter. And you can read Law Journal, you can read whatever you want to read. I've read plenty of it. There was no stronger supporter of John Roberts than him, and it was a very, very big mistake.
Quickly, Senator Cruz.
You know, Donald has a tenuous relationship with the truth. I wrote one op-ed supporting President Bush's nomination after he made it. I would not have made that nomination. But let me point out,
not what you say in the op-ed. That is not what you said in the op-ed.
Donald, please, I know it's hard not to interrupt.
But it's not what you said in the op-ed.
Breathe.
Lion Ted.
Breathe. You can do it. You can breathe. I know it's hard. I know it's hard, but just...
When they're done with the yoga, can I answer a question?
You cannot. I really hope that we don't see yoga on this stage.
Well, he's very flexible, so you never know.
Brett, you cannot, in fact, care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Jimmy Carter for president. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support John Kerry for president, as Donald did. You cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and support Harry Reid for Senate Majority Leader. And you cannot care about conservative Supreme Court justices and write 4 checks to Hillary Clinton for her to be president if you care at all about the Second Amendment or religious liberty or anything else.
Gentlemen, we're going to move on. Thank you very much. We want to talk about some more policy questions coming up.
And coming up, the candidates tackle foreign policy. But first, during the commercial break, join us for a Facebook Live on the Fox News Facebook page and tell us what you think about tonight's debate in the comment section. Stay with us. More to come.
Welcome back, everybody. We want to get right back to the questions.
And gentlemen, we're going to focus for a bit now on foreign policy. Senator Rubio, you like to take a shot at Mr. Trump on the campaign trail, saying that negotiating a hotel deal in a foreign country is not foreign policy. The other day, you even compared him to Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, as lunatics trying to get a hold of nuclear weapons. Please tell Mr. Trump why he's unprepared to be commander-in-chief.
Well, first of all, I think as we've seen throughout this campaign, Donald has not shown a seriousness about the issues of foreign policy. He just simply hasn't. Whether it was the structure of our military, even today he was asked a question about the issue of commanders not following his lead on killing the family of terrorists. And his answer basically was, if I tell them to do it, they're going to do it. Now, that's just not true. Foreign policy is not only consequential, I think much of our future now depends on it. You know, I see a lot of young people at my events around the country. I feel great when they come. And I always tell them that despite the hardships of the moment, I honestly believe that today's millennials have a chance to be the greatest generation we've had in 100 years. I really do. Because the world today has hundreds of millions of people that can afford to be their clients, their customers, their partners, people they collaborate with. But that won't happen if the world is dangerous and it's unstable. And that will require strong American leadership. The next president of the United States is going to have 8 years of a mess of a foreign policy to clean up. That's why it can't be Hillary Clinton. And quite frankly, that's why it can't be someone who simply has not shown the intellectual curiosity or the interest in learning about these very complicated issues. And Donald simply hasn't.
Mr. Trump, your response.
Well, let me just say this. I've gotten to know Marco over a period of time. Believe me, he is not a leader. Believe me.
But that doesn't answer the question.
He didn't interrupt you, but
it is not a leader. And frankly, when I say they'll do as I tell them, they'll do as I tell them. And it's very simple. It's very simple. We are in a very dangerous place. We have a depleted military, totally depleted. We have, by the way, our vets are treated horribly. We're going to take care of our vets. We're going to start taking care of our vets properly, like we should. But we're going to build up our military, and we're going to get the equipment we want, not the equipment that's sold to us by somebody that gave him and not the governor campaign contributions, okay? We're going to get the equipment that the generals and the soldiers want. I will prove to be a great leader. And, you know, it's very interesting. We talk about the polls. Every single poll, when it comes to ISIS and the military and the border, say by far Trump is the best.
Mr. Trump, your time is up.
Yeah, I just want a couple points. Once again, he was pressed on a policy issue to show his understanding of the foreign policy, and his reaction was just to attack somebody else with a name. Here's the bottom line, and I'm going to repeat it again. The world today is as complicated and as complex as it has been certainly in the lifetime of anybody here today. You indeed do have a lunatic in North Korea with nuclear weapons. You indeed do have the Chinese government taking over the most important shipping lane in the world. And Vladimir Putin, who you've expressed admiration for.
Wrong.
Well, you've expressed admiration.
Wrong. I know
someone you see as a strong leader.
Wrong.
Is now dividing
Europe up. He said very good things about me, and I said
right,
that's wonderful.
I'm going to finish my statement here.
Yeah,
and he's also sowing instability in the Middle East. You have Iran is going to get $100 billion of sanctions relief. You have radical jihadists spreading all over the world. This is a time for seriousness on these issues. You have yet to answer a single serious question about any of this. Will you give us a detailed answer about foreign policy anytime you're asked on it?
Let me just tell you, first of all, I've been hearing this man so long talking about Putin. Putin said about me. I didn't say about Putin. Putin said very nice things about me. And I say very nicely, wouldn't it be nice if actually we could get along with Russia, we could get along with foreign countries, instead of spending trillions and trillions of dollars? You're talking about Flint, Michigan. You're talking about places. We need to rebuild the infrastructure of our country. Wouldn't it be nice if we got along with the world, and maybe Russia could help us in our quest to get rid of ISIS, et cetera, et cetera?
No, gentlemen, you both have had a chance to talk. You both have had a chance to talk a couple of times. I'd like to move on to Senator Cruz. Senator, we have some breaking news tonight. North Korea's dictator, Kim Jong-un, has ordered that country's nuclear weapons to be made ready at a moment's notice. Yes. And this comes just hours after the UN Security Council approved the toughest sanctions in 2 decades against that country. Assume you're President Cruz tonight. What do you do?
Well, you're right. The news is very disturbing that Kim Jong-un has put their nuclear weapons on ready state. I'm glad that we're sending another carrier group. This is all the result of the failures of the Clinton administration 2 decades ago that negotiated a deal with North Korea, lifting the sanctions, allowing billions of dollars to flow in, and they used that money to develop nuclear weapons in the first place. Now we're in a much harder position. When you have a lunatic with nuclear weapons, to some extent it constrains your options. We need to be moving the carrier group to the South China Seas. We need to be putting in place missile defense, such as the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea. We need to be pursuing space-based missile defense. One of the advantages of space-based missile defense is that if you have a missile launch in North Korea or you have a missile launch in Iran, a space-based missile defense can take out 1 or 2 or 3 missiles before it can cross over and do damage. And we also need to be putting pressure on China, because North Korea is effectively a client state of China. All of that will happen with a strong commander-in-chief that is devoted to keeping this country safe.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Kasich, I want to move back to the debate that we heard earlier about Vladimir Putin in December, after Vladimir Putin had some nice things to say about Donald Trump, calling him bright and talented. Your campaign ran a video suggesting that Trump might name the Russian president as his running mate. Here's a clip.
I'll have to see this.
If elected, Trump promised that the dictatorial duo would, quote, make tyranny great again.
I think I'd get along very well with Vladimir Putin. I just think so.
That was your campaign video, sir.
That was a pretty good one.
Well, okay. If I may ask my question, I think you were kidding. Yeah. But it was your video. And the serious question is, because the suggestion is, do you think that Donald Trump is naive about the threat that Vladimir Putin represents?
I'm not biting. Let me just take you around the world, okay? Look, I'm going to take you very quickly. In Russia, we need to tell them we're going to arm the Ukrainians with defensive lethal weapons. And we're going to tell Putin, if you attack anybody in Eastern Europe in NATO, you attack Finland and Sweden, which is not in NATO, consider it an attack on us. And he will understand that. Secondly, I would tell the Chinese, you don't own the South China Sea. Stop hacking us. And we're going to brief up our cyber command, and we're going to be in a position to be able to take out your systems if you continue to do this. Now, let's move over into the Middle East. The Egyptians, they know they're on their last legs there because of the attack from ISIS. Jordanians really have been our friends. They know that they're at risk. So do the Saudis. So do the Gulf states. They are our allies, really, or have similar aims. We need to bring them closer to us. Turkey, a critical avenue to the Middle East. We have to bring them towards the West and not towards the East. And we have to be joint and have good human intelligence. That's sort of a semi-trip around the world, and if you gave me more time, I'd finish the trip.
Governor, thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, a final question and closing statements. And take a look at this. The volume of conversation on Facebook surrounding the remaining candidates over the last month. Whether that conversation is good or bad, Donald Trump clearly dominates the field. We'll be back with more of the Republican presidential debate live from Detroit. back to the Republican presidential debate. Let's get back at it. Gentlemen, this is the last question of the night. It has been a long time since our first debate 7 months ago in Cleveland. A lot has transpired since then, obviously, including an RNC pledge that all of you signed, agreeing to support the party's nominee and not to launch an independent run. Tonight, in 30 seconds, can you definitively say you will support the Republican nominee even if that nominee is Donald J. Trump? Senator Rubio, yes or no?
I'll support the Republican nominee.
Mr. Trump, yes or no?
I'll support Donald if he's the Republican nominee, and let me tell you why. Because the Democrats have two people left in the race. One of them is a socialist. America doesn't want to be a socialist country. If you want to be a socialist country, then move to a socialist country. The other one is under FBI investigation. And not only is she under FBI investigation, she lied to the families of the victims of Benghazi. And anyone who lies to the families of victims who have lost their lives in the service of our country can never be the commander-in-chief of the United States. We must defeat Hillary Clinton.
Senator Cruz, yes or no, you will support Donald Trump if he's the nominee?
Yes, because I gave my word that I would. And what I have endeavored to do every day in the Senate is do what I said I would do. You know, just on Tuesday, we saw an overwhelming victory in the state of Texas, where I won Texas by 17%. And I will say it was a powerful affirmation that the people who know me best, the people who I campaigned to, made promises that if you elect me, I'll lead the fight against Obamacare, I'll lead the fight against amnesty, I'll lead the fight against our debt, and I will fight for the Bill of Rights and your rights every day. That the people of Texas said, you have kept your word, and that's what I'll do as president.
Governor Kasich, yes or no, would you support Donald Trump as the Republican nominee?
Yeah, and I kind of think that before it's all said and done, I'll be the nominee. But let me also say, remember,
but your answer is yes.
I'm the little engine that can. And yeah, look, when you're in the arena, and we're in the arena, and the people out here watch, we're in the arena, we're traveling, we're working, we spend time away from our family. When you're in the arena, you enter a special circle, and you want to respect the people that you're in the arena with. So if he ends up as the nominee, sometimes he makes it a little bit hard, but, you know, I will support whoever is the Republican nominee for president.
Mr. Trump, I'm going to ask you a version of the same question. As we saw today with Mitt Romney, the Never Trump movement is gaining steam. Some people are talking about contributing millions of dollars to try to stop you. Again today, you raised the possibility that you might run as an independent if you feel you're treated unfairly by the Republican Party. So I'm going to phrase the question that the other three people on the stage just got. Can you definitively say tonight that you will definitely support the Republican nominee for president, even if it's not you?
Even if it's not me? Let me just start off by saying something.
30 seconds, sir.
Okay, that I'm very, very proud of. Millions and millions of people have come to the Republican Party over the last little while. They've come to the Republican Party, and by the way, the Democrats are losing people. This is a trend that's taken place. It's the biggest thing happening in politics, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I'm going to give them some credit, too, even though they don't deserve it. But the answer is, yes, I will.
Yes, you will support the nominee of the party.
Yes, I will.
Candidates, it's now time for your closing statements. Governor Kasich, we'll start with you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I love being here in Michigan, and I want to say to all of you here that I have a record of being able to solve some of the biggest problems. It's not just talk and it's not theory. I did it in Washington by helping people get into a healthier economic situation. I've done it in Ohio, and as we've made progress in Ohio, we've left no one behind. We've not left behind the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the working poor, the developmentally disabled, and we have raised our minority community. And as President of the United States, I will go back to Washington. I will take the formulas that I used, and I will fix the problems in Washington, and you'll work with me as I send you power to fix your communities, your neighborhoods, your state, and together we'll restore the spirit of America, and I know you want that. Thank you.
Senator Rubio, 30-second closing statement.
I know this has been an unusual election cycle as it continues, and there's a lot of problems in America, and people are truly hurting. But this election is not just about confronting our problems. It's also about embracing our opportunities. I believe the 21st century holds the potential to be the greatest era in the history of the United States if we get this election right and if we act now. If we do what needs to be done, we can leave our children as the freest and most prosperous Americans that have ever lived, and the 21st century can be the
Cruz, your closing statement.
I want to talk to every soldier and sailor and airman and Marine. I want to talk to every mom and dad and sister and brother and son and daughter of someone fighting for this country. For commander-in-chief that doesn't believe in you, that sends you into combat with rules of engagement that tie your arms behind your back. That is wrong, it is immoral, and in January 2017, it will end. I want to also talk to all the police officers and firefighters and first responders who have been left behind with this president starting in January 2017. I will have your back.
Mr. Trump, your closing statement.
Thank you. I am going to bring jobs back to the United States like nobody. Going to fix very depleted military. We're going to take care of our vets. We're going to strengthen our borders. And you're going to be very, very proud of this country in just a few years if I'm elected president. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that'll do it for the 11th Republican primary debate of the 2016 presidential race. But the night is not over yet.
Not by a long shot. A special edition of the O'Reilly Factor is next. And remember, Fox News has the race for the White House covered all the way to the conventions and on to the general election.
Our thanks to Detroit and the crowd here. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great evening.